Hi, everyone, and welcome back to In the Spotlight. I have two wonderful guests with me today. I have actually a co-host, Nicholas Chamberas, contributor of Newsmax, and of course, John Sitilides, who is very well known in the Greek American community as a national security senior fellow with the Foreign Policy Research Institute and State Department diplomacy consultants. John, welcome, and thank you for being on the show with us today. We're very excited to talk about the inauguration, this historical inauguration that is taking place on January 20th, tomorrow.
Well, thank you very much, Yanna, for this opportunity. It's a pleasure to be with you and your audience.
Well, we're very happy to have you and Nicholas. This is historical. The country, basically over 45% of the citizens voted for Donald Trump, and the Greek American community is a very big supporter of Donald Trump. What does this mean for foreign policy, specifically for Greek foreign policy? What is this going to look like, this administration and the Greek relations?
That's an important question you ask, Yanna. Let me break this down, first of all, into three subcategories regarding the U.S.-Europe relationship. Primarily, of course, is Donald Trump's determination to bring about a ceasefire and hopefully an enduring settlement between Russia and Ukraine. We have seen over the last 3 years, in February, if this war is not resolved, we're starting the fourth year of massive carnage, hundreds of thousands of dead Ukrainian and Russian men, possibly for no reason, when this war finally comes to a conclusion. And the question is going to be, how do we bring about a ceasefire that provides for Russia's security concerns and Ukraine's security concerns? And that ties into the larger issue of the U.S. relationship with our NATO allies and the degree to which they begin to take their national security and self-defense far more seriously, rather than depending on the United States for their defense, whether it's against Russia, whether it's against Iran or other countries. And this is primarily going to be a concern with the countries that border or are nearest to Russia. We're looking at the Baltic countries, at Poland, Romania, Bulgaria. And this is going to be a very interesting debate in the next several months and next several years. And then there's the issue of trade between the United States and the European Union, given the fact that the European Union has a very large trade surplus with the United States, which is anathema to Donald Trump, whether it's Mexico, whether it's Canada, whether it's China, whether it's the European Union. And then to focus on the Eastern Mediterranean, I think there's going to be a very strong forward-looking relationship between the United States and Greece, building on the strategic dialogue that was established under the first Trump administration. There is going to be concern about what Turkey is going to be undertaking in Syria, now that we have the chaos there with the terrorist group HTS taking over the government in Damascus. The possibility of a Turkish-Syrian exclusive economic zone agreement that threatens Cyprus's rights in the Eastern Mediterranean. And don't forget the fact that Turkey also has a very important military relationship involving the civil war in Libya to the south of Greece, to the south of Crete, that makes this area even more unstable, which is why Greece is going to be an even more important partner of the United States in helping to bring about stability throughout the East Med.
The former ambassador, outgoing George Tunis, has been very vocal and has tried to bridge the gap between Greece and the United States by creating a very, very strong relationship. And how do you feel about President-elect Donald Trump's choice, nomination Kimberly Guilfoyle as the next U.S. ambassador to Greece? Do you think that that relationship will continue to strengthen or build?
I believe so. I mean, keep in mind that George Tunis, who many of us know from many decades ago in New York City, has done a fine job as ambassador, given, first of all, his love for Greece, his love for all things Greek, the affection that so many Greek people have for him as the first Greek-American ambassador in Athens since the early 1990s, poly thermos anthropos, as we like to say, to the Greek people, but also because he's had a very strong personal relationship with President Biden and the top national security and foreign policy team around the Oval Office. And I think Kimberly Guilfoyle brings a similar set of relationships, including very strong personal relationship with President-elect Trump. she has his cell number. She can call him anytime she needs to. And I think having that kind of a strong voice in Athens at the U.S. Embassy that can work with the State Department, we believe Secretary of State Marco Rubio will be in office very shortly, with possibly Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, to work on a whole host of foreign policy, military, and commercial trade and energy issues. She's a former prosecutor. She's a very, very smart, intelligent, focused woman. I think she'll do a superb job in a very important relationship. And I think the Greek people can be very happy that they have someone who has President Trump's personal ear whenever there are issues of concern in Athens and in Washington.
Well, we're looking forward to having her and seeing, hopefully continuing and strengthening that relationship and that bridge between Greece and the United States, as Greece is such a strategic partner, really, in East Med. What are your thoughts about the inauguration? We hear that it's going to take place indoors. Is this about the weather or about security?
Well, we know there is a weather issue. If you recall, historically, the last time that we had a canceled outdoor swearing-in ceremony was in 1985. Washington, D.C., I think, was under about a foot of snow. And so those were very disadvantageous conditions. There was no choice but to move it indoors. This is really more of a deep freeze, but we don't have that kind of a precipitation issue. There could very well be a security concern. But if there is, I don't fault the U.S. government for not revealing the concerns publicly. We don't want to reveal our intelligence sources to our enemies and to let them know how we found out where there may be concerns. But the bottom line is we want everyone to enjoy as historic and magnificent an inauguration ceremony as possible. And even if the swearing-in ceremony is indoors, there'll be galas and balls and festivities all through the weekend. And really, I think Donald Trump, more than anything else, wants to get to work right away, sign dozens of executive orders, and get moving with a very ambitious, very energetic policy agenda on domestic and foreign policy issues.
Well, he hit the ground running. Nicholas, as a former campaign manager for the Republican Party, can you tell us a little bit about what we're going to see under the Trump administration for the United States of America?
I think President Trump has made it clear that the economic revival and undoing the catastrophe of the third Obama administration, that's also known as the Biden administration, are going to be top priorities. What one would expect is immediate executive action, not just on immigration, but on the Keystone Pipeline, which has basically the war on energy and not just the war in Ukraine have caused energy prices to spike in the United States, particularly. Obviously, they've spiked across the globe, especially in Europe. But I think you'll see action on the Keystone Pipeline. It won't happen overnight. I'm told that the permit process is much more complicated than it seems. But just laying the groundwork to bring back tens of thousands of high-paying jobs and a reliable supply of energy into the United States is really going to boost things. I think you're also going to see action on bringing back, on rescuing the 300,000 missing children. And I know I was talking to John about clickbait before, and this sounds like the ultimate clickbait, but I've done my research. The United States government literally cannot account for close to 300,000 children that have been allowed into this country from our southern border. And you hear about children that have been authorized to go under the custody of gang members of MS-13. There's a specific instance of someone who was found with child pornographic websites being the host and organizer of having children under his custody under the program. And there was another whistleblower who pointed out that over 300 children were processed using the same address. So I think the Trump administration is going to act very quickly to try to locate these children, to rescue these children. I think it's a prerogative, it's a priority. It's we need to have the compassion and the morality to save these children. I really think, you hear shock and awe, but I don't think we're going to be surprised at what the president's going to focus on in his first week. I think what may be surprising is the scope. It be much greater than initially anticipated.
John, as far as foreign policy is concerned, what are some of the key issues that you would like to see addressed or to see some change?
There are several major issues that President Trump is inheriting from the Biden administration that are going to need very quick, very sharp, very focused attention. I would say the most important relationship that the United States has on the world stage is that with the Communist Party of China. We're dealing here now with a peer economic, military, and technological competitor. And I think probably paramount right now is going to be the need to engage in some type of either negotiations or new deterrent policy vis-a-vis Beijing to try to persuade the Communist Party of China that a naval blockade or outright invasion of Taiwan would be enormously destructive to the Chinese economy, to the Chinese people, and possibly threaten the grip on power of the Chinese Communist Party. We need to figure out a way to have some type of a relationship to manage this relationship with China. China's not going away anytime soon. Neither is the Communist Party's grip on power there. And we are very trade and economically interdependent on China. And they also have a rapidly growing military that is able to project power throughout the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean, and to threaten neighbors of China that are allies of the United States, whether it's Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, and the like. But paramount is avoiding war. And just as Donald Trump during the election was very proud of the fact that there were no new wars that began under his first administration, I believe he's determined to see no new wars started under his second administration. And paramount there is no war over Taiwan. So that's, I think, going to be paramount. And it could be in the context of a larger trade bargain with China that moves back national security and health-related trade out of China back to the U.S. or to allied territory so that we can better provide for our nation and our people, as we learned during the COVID pandemic, and allow for Americans to buy T-shirts and electronic devices and furniture from China. That's fine, but not military hardware, not pharmaceuticals, and not minerals and rare earth elements that we need for our technological economy. As I mentioned before, the Russia relationship, I think, needs to be rebalanced. Russia is not going anywhere, and Europe has to deal with the fact that there is now a Russia that feels that NATO has engaged in a proxy war against it. So we need to find a way to bridge that gap with Russia. And then the Middle East is very much of concern, not so much, I would say, because of what Hamas did to Israel and Israel's response, both against Hamas and against Hezbollah, but that Iran may become a nuclear power in the next several years. And if Iran goes nuclear, Saudi Arabia has declared it intends to acquire a nuclear arsenal, which means Egypt will likely acquire a nuclear arsenal, which means Turkey will likely acquire a nuclear arsenal. And then we have a nuclear proliferation regime in the most war-torn region of the world. And for your audience, Yanna, what does Greece do with all of the national security problems that have been in place since the 1960s and 1970s over Cyprus and the Aegean? What happens when the Eastern question now involves a nuclear arsenal that is guided by Erdogan and his government in Ankara?
The administration has been also vocal, just going back for a second, about TikTok. They are now saying that he's not sure, he's looking into it, which is a very important social media that is collecting American, not only American, but citizens' data, but international data. What do you think? Do you think that TikTok is a threat to the U.S. citizens?
My personal opinion is that TikTok, because it's owned by ByteDance, which reports to the Chinese Communist Party, and there are national security laws in China that state that the Communist Party has the ability to demand data and any other information from any Chinese company, even if ByteDance has not done so today. If Xi Jinping demands that information tomorrow, ByteDance has no choice but to surrender it. And that means compromising the security and the privacy of 170 or 180 million TikTok users in the United States. It's a fascinating debate over free speech and First Amendment rights. But I would say, just as during the Cold War, we wouldn't allow Moscow to own CBS News or the New York Times, I don't think that an outright enemy of the United States, and that is the Communist Party of China, should be able to operate an app in the United States that sucks data out of mobile phones and potentially passes it on to the enemy, that is the Communist Party of China. What's interesting is going to be that President Trump is trying to find a solution to this issue so that hopefully ByteDance will allow TikTok to be sold, maybe to an American company, and then you don't have the threat of the Chinese Communist Party overseeing the data control. And all of these Americans can continue with their social media happy talk and distractions and amusement on TikTok, but not if it's a threat to American national security. That is paramount.
Okay. And so, Nicholas, just going into, before we close out, about the Greek American community. The Greek Americans have supported Donald Trump. Tell us a little bit more about the statistics of the Greek American community and their support.
Well, you had a who's who list of supporters, including John Sitilides, Michael Psaros, George Adjiriu, Dean Spanos. The list goes on, and I know I've forgotten some people, and I'm going to get in trouble for this, but that's okay. I think the enthusiasm in the Greek American community and their support for Donald Trump is tremendous. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to leverage this into reshifting of the focus on Turkey's hegemonic ambitions. Turkey is far stronger now geopolitically than they were 4 years ago. I think what happened in Syria really cements their role, and their relationship with Libya gives them so much to bargain with and so much to use against Greece. And the one issue is that Erdogan is not considered a hardliner. That's the interesting part. You know, the hardliners in Turkey really dream of a massive expansion of Turkey, and we don't even need to talk about expansion, but the aggressive attempts to legitimize the illegal Republic of Northern Cyprus. They've expanded those efforts. Not only questioning the aging, which is the rite of passage of Turkish politicians, I guess, but to talk about Thraki and basically inserting terrorists and covert agents into Greek regions. I think that President Trump is going to have to face the Turkish threat. This does not, Erdogan, again, he might be the least hardliner of them all, but I think in terms of but basically increasing military aid to Greece and Cyprus is vital to check the Turkish threat, because it's very real. I mean, just a few months ago, you had supposed discussions going on about lasting peace between Greece and Turkey. And a few days ago, you had their prime minister talking about increasing Turkish territory into Greece. So I'm hopeful that the Turkish threat can be dealt with constructively. It's in both countries' interest to have peace, harmony. The investment potential under cooperation in both countries is massive, but it's very hard. It's difficult to get anything substantive going with the constant threats of military aggression and even outright war.
John, do you want to add to that?
No, of course. I mean, this is an extraordinarily complex relationship between Greece and Turkey. And even as the government of Prime Minister Mitsotakis seeks ways, and I think admiringly so, to advance cooperation where it's realistic and doable and not at the expense of Greece's national security, the blue homeland concept is one that is very dangerous. It encroaches on Greece's territorial rights in the Aegean Sea. We have, as Nicholas mentioned, the ongoing occupation of Northern Cyprus, shockingly now in its 5th decade. I mean, who would have thought back in the mid-1970s that we'd be looking at this ongoing division of a European Union member country in 2025 with, unfortunately, no end in sight. I mean, I don't see where there's going to be a breakthrough in Cyprus anytime in the near future. And now we even have Erdogan's coalition partner, Devlet Bahçeli of the MHP ultra-nationalist party, who is talking about winning back or taking back the Dodekanisa and bringing it under Turkish control in some type of a neo-Ottoman imperialist vision. So on the one hand, I think there's much constructive talk about where there's realistic engagement and cooperation, but then Erdogan keeps clawing it back with these types of very dangerous, very belligerent statements and actions, whether it's in the Aegean, whether it's in Cyprus, the inability for the Greeks to be able to extract or to explore for energy south of Castellorizo in the Eastern Mediterranean because of these disputes over exclusive economic zones. And Nicholas is right. I mean, right now, I think Turkey does have more leverage because even the U.S., even Uncle Sam has to go to Ankara in order to achieve larger goals in Syria and in the Middle East. And the Israelis now have to contend with Turkey as well because they have so much influence with this radical Islamist terror organization that controls the government in Damascus. So hopefully Donald Trump and President Erdogan will have a constructive relationship. Trump can be persuasive with Erdogan to pull back on a lot of dangerous, belligerent, aggressive statements and move towards a more harmonious and mutually beneficial relationship with Greece and Cyprus, because it's also in Turkey's interests and in the interests of Turkey's 80 million citizens.
It is, and let's hope Guilfoyle can champion these issues for the Greeks and, of course, the Greek Americans who are most interested in Greece's national interests. Gentlemen, anticipation is growing, it's rising. This inauguration is a pivoting moment for American history, and there's bold promises as this administration comes in. There's renewed priorities and challenges and opportunities. Let's just pray that, because the world is watching, that this new leadership is going to begin a wonderful future for the country. And so thank you for your time. Nicholas, thank you so much. And John, and we're going to be watching carefully. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Yanna. Good to be with you and Nicholas. Thank you.